Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. My name is Jamira Burley, and I'm here with the amazing, as always, incomparable Brea Baker. Today, we're talking about Blackness in all of its ranges and the recent diaspora wars that we are seeing pop up all over the internet that feels like it's never going away, unfortunately.
Literally never going away. I actually think these conversations just keep popping up like every other week, but lately these debates have reached such a fever pitch. A lot of it was in response to critiques of Essence Fest and whether legacy Black media spaces should be focused on only Black American culture rather than this wider range of who we are. It's a lot to dig into. A lot of it is a mess. But first, let's spend some time with the latest headlines. Now,
in the first diaspora war,
right, speaking of infighting amongst the Black community,
amongst the Blacks,
why are Nicki Minaj and SZA beefing? Now, listen. As a New York girl, as a former Barb, everything that Nicki Minaj does is so, it's like...
too much.
It's always too much. I'm like, what was Kanye smoking that... Put it down. Whatever it is, put it down. She's always beefing with someone. First it was Cardi B, then Meg Thee Stallion, then Lotto, JT, and now SZA. She's not even a rap girl. Anyway, Nicki Minaj thought that SZA tweeting about Mercury retrograde was a dig at her. She went on such a rant about how SZA can't sing and draws on her freckles and is aligned with people who have abused her. She's been like,
I know Nicki's not
the FBI and like her local congressperson and being like, y'all need to investigate these TDE people. And I'm just like, I just hate to see someone so talented go down so sad. It's really like, above all, really corny. Cause it's like, at this point, you are the antithesis of a girl's girl. You're just anyone who's thriving, you're tearing them down. And SZA is like, listen, baby, I'm on tour. I'm minding my business, making money, living my best life, had a number one movie this year.
Yeah.
Album went diamond. Like, I'm not even about to go back and forth with you on this. But it's just been very disappointing to see a rap icon be so petty.
And that's the thing, her pettiness distracts you from her talent. Because like you, I was also a Nicki Minaj fan, but like the things she's done over the years really make you like, you're so consumed with the drama of it all that you can't even focus on the fact that this woman is a lyricist. Like she's so freaking talented and she's her worst enemy at this point. Like she's the one distracting us from the work that she's doing, from the progress that she's making, from the music that she's producing. And it's just like, at this point, you want the negative energy that is surrounding you and all of your talent that folks can't even, like even folks that like who want to support her can't even do so publicly because she's made such a mess of it.
Yeah. It's exactly what you said. She's definitely distracting from her own legacy. And that is the worst part. I mean, and as if she needs any help. She's already married someone who's distracting from her legacy. She's already like, come on.
That's it right there. When you're married to someone like that, you should probably sit in the corner and shut up, like, and like stop talking because there's so many things wrong with that.
Yeah.
So many things wrong with that. I hate to share this news, especially because I'm sure most people have heard about it already. But, you know, as someone who grew up on the Cosby show, and, you know, that has its own dark cloud upon it due to the actions of Bill Cosby. Malcolm Jamal Warner, unfortunately, passed away in a drowning incident that happened in Costa Rica this past weekend. And many of you may know him as Theo from the hit show The Cosbys, but he has worked for over 40 years as an actor and director, also starring in sitcoms like Malcolm and Eddie, as well as Read Between the Lines, The Residency, and as well as 911, TV roles in 911. And it's pretty heartbreaking as someone who grew up with him, who was not that far in age. So I felt like I could relate to much of his character in the Cosbys, and to see someone just lose his life so quickly and so abruptly. And he was an icon in the Black community and beyond. Like so many people I think were deeply impacted by the loss. The loss
was even more of an icon than I even realized. And I hate that sometimes you don't find out about someone's full range until they've passed away. But I saw that he directed a New Edition music video, the Heartbreak video. He won a Grammy with another iconic Black artist. He did an NPR Tiny Desk. Like he's done so much.
His NPR Tiny Desk is so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. I was watching it as a result of the news. And so I'm just like, I hate that we only find this stuff out on the other side, but I do think that he is someone who got a lot of flowers while he was here. And I'm just team, I want Black men to grow old. I just really want more Black men to grow old. I saw someone tweet something that was like, I thought he'd be the kind of person that would eventually be paying like the grandfather in shows because he'd be around so long. And it's devastating to see him lose his life in his 50s in something that was so accidental, freak accident, uncontrollable. He can swim. So of the claims of this is why we need to learn how to swim.
Well, the waves are dangerous.
It's just the waves. So it's just devastating. I am holding his wife and his daughter so close to my heart. I think he had just celebrated his daughter's birthday. And so I'm devastated for them.
Yeah. Sending well wishes and prayers to his family. But yeah, what a time. What a time. Yeah. But I like that though. I agree. I do want Black men to grow old and happy and healthy.
All three of those things. So yeah, we've had a lot of losses really the last like 5 years.
So many of our greats
and Kobe all the way down. So I want everyone to just stay inside and stay safe. Just so
okay, not to stay inside, girl, but definitely stay safe.
Right, but stay safe.
Yeah.
To shift gears to some political news, AOC has been getting hit with a lot of critique around her recent votes. There was a defense bill. There's a lot of back and forth about whether she needs to even defend herself. Her office was vandalized. And listen, I am not here, especially considering we just had 2 Democratic lawmakers. One was assassinated and the other assassination attempt. Yeah. I'm definitely not here for physical threats on anyone's life. And I also think that legitimate critiques, there needs to be space for that. That it's unfair to kind of like warp everything together as if there's nothing that she needs to be held accountable for. And so just to make it clear, there was a defense bill to send billions of dollars across U.S. military and U.S. aid to other militaries. There was an amendment to that bill, which was introduced by Marjorie Taylor Greene, but the amendment to the bill was right of all people. I'm like, what is happening in like something's wrong in the Sims world. But Marjorie Taylor Greene did introduce an amendment to the bill that would have excluded funding to Israel for Israel's defense and Iron Dome. And only 6 Congress people voted for that amendment to the bill. Some of the 6 were our beloved progressive Congress people, Rep. Rashida Tlaib, Rep. Summer Lee. Unfortunately, AOC was not one of the people to vote for that amendment. And she has been kind of walking around and, in my opinion, being a little gaslighty, like omitting important details to say, I've never voted for funding, but you also didn't vote down funding when you had the chance to either. And I think it's unfair to also hide behind the fact that this amendment was introduced by Marjorie Taylor Greene, because even though the reasons that Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced the amendment were not because she believes in a free Palestine, but because she believes we are sending too much money abroad and we need to be focused on America first. The reality is the amendment would have been an important way to hold Israel accountable, to withhold U.S. support for the actions that Israel is doing. And I think it's unfair for her to kind of hide behind who introduced the amendment and not debate this on the merit of what actually would have been done. And I'm just a big person of like, follow the lead of the people most impacted. If Rashida Tlaib is voting for or against something in regards to Palestine, that is what any supporter of Palestine needs to be voting for or against. She's our only Palestinian American congresswoman, and we need to follow her lead. And unfortunately, AOC didn't, and she's kind of like hiding behind the Vandalism Act to avoid any accountability for it. And I just think that's really whack.
Yeah, and I want to say this, and I'm trying not to cry, but I'm like, the international community has verified that we have entered the point of no return for Gaza, right? These people are going to starve to death.
Yeah.
On our watch. And I think, AOC is extremely disappointing sometimes because she likes to play this both sides, and she likes to play like you're not smart enough to understand the policy. And I think that's really frustrating, especially at a time where these people are going to starve to death, and there's going to be no excuse for any of us not knowing. No excuse for any of us to not know where the money is coming from, who's made these decisions. And all of this is happening in the midst of a country that is continuing to decide who life matters.
Yeah.
They don't think Palestinians' lives matter. They don't think immigrant lives matter. And this is indicative of a country. Why am I crying?
No, I feel you. No, you're crying because it's real. And I think what's frustrating is people are debating it like talking points.
Yeah.
And like
these are real people.
And it's real shit. I feel you.
Yeah. So AOC, to your point, should take direction from those most impacted. And there's no excuse. There's going to be no excuse to hide behind when, this only continues to escalate as we continue to provide Israel with a blank check to do whatever the hell they want anywhere in the world. Like we are the co-conspirators in this.
Absolutely. And I think, and I really appreciate your emotion because I think it's like, it makes you feel crazy when you're like,
yeah, absolutely crazy.
What are we talking about here? What are we debating here? Like now you're it does make you feel crazy. And I think there have been quotes about this and I'm like, not going to get it right. So I'm just going to paraphrase, but this idea that like, no, we're not the crazy ones. Like we're the ones intact with our humanity. We should be devastated. We should be emotional. And like those who proclaim to be progressives and are hiding behind carefully worded tweets and statements and press releases is bullshit. It's really bullshit. And I do feel like, especially since becoming a mom, I find myself crying all the time now because I just hold my son and I'm just like, I know that this country does not value my beautiful brown chocolate baby. Mm-hmm. But I also know that I live in relative safety economically and other things that I've been able to do. I can't imagine looking into the eyes of my child and watching ribs protrude, knowing that if it's not a bomb, it's going to be the lack of aid. Like, it's just, it is maddening. It is really sickening. And I think that not enough of us have emotion. So I appreciate it. And I think it's really, really real. And I want us to stop acting like the other side. I want us to get back in touch with our emotions and forget the lobbying of, well, I don't want to vote for anything that has her name on it. If it's a good amendment, vote for it. Whether you think it's going to get passed or not, let your voice be one of the few that said, I was willing
to record. Yeah.
And
be on the record to support it. Yeah. And there's other Congress members, right? There's other House of Representatives who should be held equally as accountable to AOC. Yeah. She's been the most vocal, but there are other members of Congress, particularly in the House of Representatives, who are Black, many of whom, and I'm not even going to say names, many of whom have lost children to police violence. And like they're supporting continue to fund Israel. And at some point the rubber has to meet the road because this is going to be their legacy. This is the legacy of their administration. The last piece of news that I would like to share in this segment is, budget cuts threatens the federal protection of homeless children. In a new recent op-ed that was put out by the Brookings Institute, it outlined how the new president budget for 2026 proposes eliminating dedicated funding specifically that would guarantee education protections for more than 1.4 million students who are experiencing houselessness. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this before on the show that, this administration, the point is cruelty. The point is to continue to displace and to cause disruptions in the lives of those mostly marginalized. But to think we're now coming after the most basic rights that would ensure the protection for students who are experiencing houselessness is pretty devastating, especially because we know they don't have anywhere else to go. And school might, for many of them, be the only safe haven, the only place where they can find refuge, the only place where oftentimes they can wash their clothes, they can find a hot meal, they can be safe. And now the president is kind of pulling the rug from underneath them. And it's indicative of an administration that is all about cruelty.
Oh, yeah. Very indicative. It's also frustrating because I think, during the pandemic, it was wild. Everyone, new normal. Yeah. And it's like a lot of people did not rebound from the pandemic. That little $1,200 was not enough. No. Like regardless of what those who voted for Trump because of it say, that was not enough for most families. Most families came out of the pandemic worse off because they either could not afford to work from home, could not afford childcare, could not, like, had to give up one or the other. And it is just mind blowing to feel like the few, as you said, the few safe spaces, the few places where someone can get a hot meal, can talk to a trusted, safe adult, can participate in extracurriculars and have that be fun, like, are being stripped from people. And it's just, I'm just like, it means nothing to live in the richest country in the world if this is what the reality is. Like, who is benefiting from it being the richest country in the world beyond the billionaires and the politicians getting the kickback?
And that's what it is. And that's really what it is. It's like the only people benefiting are politicians and billionaires, the least desperate and vulnerable populations that we have. So, you know, nothing new in America at this point. With that being said, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back to start unpacking these diaspora wars. You are watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
Yes, season 2 of True Talks is here, and we are turning up even higher.
Yo, it's your man Torre, the newest co-host on the set, and I'm bringing heart, heat, and hard truth every night.
And we are keeping it all the way fire. Ain't no filters, ain't no fluff, just straight facts. Y'all know how we do.
So stop scrolling and pull up to our YouTube at Truth Talks-Live. Like, subscribe, and smash that bell.
And after you do that, join us because we go live weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern on all the coasts. Wherever you are, from culture to controversy, we say what everyone else is scared to say.
We talk truth. Season 2 of Truth Talks. Let's go. Because this time, we ain't asking. We're taking the mic.
Everyone, welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. We just finished unpacking some of the latest headlines, and now it's time to dig into the topic of the day, diaspora wars. These battles over Blackness and culture have been popping up more and more on social media in times where it's time that we have a heart-to-heart about it, because I think they're being used as a distraction mechanism and oftentimes as a way to stop us from building bridges across borders for people who look like us and come from similar backgrounds.
Say that. Yes. This is classic divide and conquer strategy. And while we're bickering with one another, there's someone else who's like, yes, got him. And so, I think that these conversations manifest in a lot of different ways, debates over who does and doesn't have culture. And I will say a lot of times, like, Black Americans are on the receiving end of these critiques of we don't know where we come from, or we don't have culture, we're not intact enough. But other times there are accusations about who seems to be more centered in media, politics, and the economy. Sometimes it really breeds off as xenophobia, a lot of the diaspora wars. And it's not just here in America. I've seen it in a lot of different places. I'll admit that in certain instances, for example, when like a famous Black American from history is played by someone not from our community, I do sometimes roll my eyes. But I think that there are valid critiques and conversations about making sure that people have an opportunity to portray their community members, and that we're just not blanketly kind of throwing things at the wall. But then I think that it gets to this place that it's just like blown out of proportion, and the debates get more and more unpredictable. The conversations become really unproductive, especially when opinions and personal observations are presented as fact and used to discredit the experiences of others. Because the reality is, Black people are not a monolith, not in America, certainly not across the diaspora. And so the idea that my experience invalidates your experience or invalidates any other Black person on this planet's experience is such a foolish, silly thing to do, and plays into like white supremacy's hand.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and to label all of us as monoliths enables for those who are who are trying to oppress us, who are trying to limit our rights of movement and upward mobility, to claim that if we can do this to one Black person, then all of them are deserving of that same action, right? Because they are a monolith. But the Black American experience is a very unique experience. We are ancestors of slaves, like Brea and I. We come from a rich and resilient history and culture that has birthed music, food, traditions, regional slang, and cultural phenomenons that would not have happened without the unique experience that we had here. But we also have Black Caribbeans, Black Latinos, Black people living across the continent of Africa who have experienced similar forms of oppression, not the same, right, but similar forms of oppression and racism and exploitation and colonialism that makes us all have a unique connection to each other, because we know that discrimination, that displacement, that marginalization came as a reflection of our skin color, right? Came as a reflection of discrimination against us. And we've had, we've been treated like we were cattle, like we were something to be borrowed and traded and disposed of when convenient. And I think what's really disheartening about these conversations is that it makes it seems like some people were deserving of the harm that they've experienced, right? As if our enemies are not the same, like as if this conversation does not benefit them the most. And I think that's really what's frustrating when folks are like, but where are you really from? Mother effer, I can trace my family 4 or 5 generations here in the United States, 4 or 5 generations here in the United States. I forgot who, there's a Black actor who said on a recent TikTok, he was like, people will look at my hair and my skin color and ask me what I'm mixed with. This is not this reflection is not a moment of pride. It is actually a reflection of a crime. Like my hair, my skin is a reflection that a crime was committed against Black people. And I think instead of us learning about each other, we are absorbing and allowing ourselves to be hoodwinked by the lies we've been told about each other, which is funny because if they have lied to you about you, why would you believe them about anybody else?
Right.
Why would you take their word as gospel? If they have lied to you about you and your people, why would you believe them about what they're telling you about other people? They are liars.
That's the part. It's like, wait a second. So it's all propaganda, except when it's something that feeds into this niche narrative that you think supports you. But again, this is the challenge about having deep conversations over social media, and the fact that social media can be a beautiful place for bringing us together, but it should not be the only place where we're having these conversations. And many times I think it's actually so counterproductive, because nuance is impossible to have on social media for the most part. We need spaces, honestly, like this to go deeper, in-person spaces where we can dig deep into our shared experiences, the differences, celebrate our roots, but without shitting on each other, right? Like, I think that to your point about, tracing your roots back 4 or 5 generations, my family has been in America since the 1700s and 1800s. I can trace that even just in the state of North Carolina, where my family still has land. I was raised in New York, though, where Caribbean and Latin American food and music have been pivotal to my experience. If I go to a party and I don't hear soca or dancehall or reggaeton, something is off. Okay. I like being able to go to Washington Heights and get really great Dominican and Puerto Rican and Cuban food. I like being able to experience, Labor Day parades and go to Carnival. I've traveled to Jamaica and Brazil for Carnival. I've been to New Orleans for Essence Fest. One day I hope to be in West Africa for 30 December. Like, there is so much value in what we've all been able to do with the circumstances that have been handed to us. We didn't ask to be spread across the country and the world, but it's what happened, and we made something beautiful out of it. Yeah. And so to reduce one another to these archetypes and stereotypes and flat, 2-dimensional portrayals is exactly what they're trying to do to us, and we're doing their work for them. So I just feel like there needs to be more space for us to appreciate and admire one another's contributions to the diaspora without it feeling like it is something negative towards us. And unfortunately, I just feel like oftentimes what we're seeing in these diaspora awards is that the only way to express pride in your own sub-Black experience is to downplay another, is to downplay the Black British experience, is to downplay the Black Nigerian experience, the Black Ghanaian experience. And I think there's playful moments of Jollof wars and jambalaya and whatever, but there's moments when it gets really serious, where, children who are more immediately from the African continent experience a lot of bullying. I mean, growing up in New York, I saw that a lot with Haitian children. And it's just like, we're all Black. We're all Black.
We're all Black.
To each other.
Yeah. We are all Black, and it's pretty devastating to watch it happen, especially in 2025, where we just should know better. We have access to all. It's one thing it was happening in the 90s, in the 80s, the early 2000s. Sure, maybe people weren't as versed. We have been exposed to other cultures within the African diaspora for too long. We have met people from that African diaspora. We are neighbors to them. We have seen them on TV. We have access to all the information on the internet to be able to know better. And still people continue to kind of stoke these fears and these misunderstandings that does not benefit any one of us. Because when you're stopped by the police, they don't give a damn if you're from South Africa or if you're from South Philly. They don't care. They're still busting your ass. They're still treating you like shit. And that is a reminder that the solidarity between Black folks have not just been around the evolution of culture and music. It also has been the evolution of how we've built political solidarity amongst each other. We've seen that with Harry Belafonte, who's Jamaican American, with Snooki Carmichael, who is Trinidadian. Shirley Chisholm was from Barbados. They all spoke against systems of sharecroppers, the legacies of slavery, of racial capitalism facing Black folks across the diaspora. They recognize that one of us can't get free without all of us getting free, right? That our unique experience is deeply tied. Our legacy, our ability to win is deeply tied to one another. And when we allow these conversations to stoke, they are bringing more views and clicks to these platforms that don't benefit us.
Facts, that part, yes. Our solidarity is so deeply rooted. And yes, ancestry matters. We are not saying that where you come from and what your specific experience is irrelevant. But as you said, oppressors are not going to stop to ask you, where are your parents from, before they engage in anti-Blackness, which is why we say anti-Blackness is global. Unfortunately, every culture on this planet has some history of anti-Blackness across it. And that is an unfortunate situation, but it is something that unites us and allows us to build solidarity, as you said, to say, hey, we have numbers and we do have power and we do have strength that runs through our blood, all of us, because we are part of this diaspora. And as you said, it's not just police brutality that we're all affected by as far as like here in the US, it's redlining, it's mass incarceration. You think they were stopping to, like employment discrimination, have all affected Black people of all backgrounds. And so when we recognize that, we can say we all have a stake in dismantling these situations and dismantling these systems of oppression, instead of deciding, well, I'm trying to get free over here from me, but you can keep them over there. Like when I see Black Americans who say immigration is not their issue, as if people who look like them are not being arrested by ICE every single day.
ICE cares. ICE does not care if you're an American citizen or not. They don't care
at all. And then when you travel with that blue passport and that American privilege, so it often goes away unless people see that you are visibly American, which is, hard to do if you're not waving your passport in the air. But there was instances of Black Americans being deported out of the Dominican Republic because they were being mistaken for Haitian. There have been instances of Black Americans traveling in other places experiencing discrimination because they're being mistaken for African refugees. So we are all affected in one another's country context, and we have to recognize that, stand with one another, and not be throwing one another, under the bus.
No, absolutely. I agree. And I think, and let me be very clear. I think there is, to your point, we both have to celebrate the unique differences of all of our experience within the African diaspora. We also have to recognize that there are some places that are just created for certain groups of people. And when I say that, I don't mean it can be inclusive of other communities. It can have themes from other across the diaspora. But I think when it would never be an expectation that there's so many Black Americans visiting Nigeria and Ghana during Dirty December that now that is only geared towards Black Americans. You know what I mean? And the same should be true for Essence. We have to also recognize that there are some places we exist in a world that does not create spaces for us. So when our people finally create space for us, we should hone in and celebrate those moments while also, of course, being inclusive. But it shouldn't be a takeover to the extent that one group is almost erased from that movement, erased from that moment. And I think that's where people feel the tension is hell yeah, be inclusive, but stop acting like the erasure or the feeling of erasure isn't happening. And I think we have to find a way to stroke a nice balance, because we want people to feel celebrated and uplifted and educated. And that is a requirement, or that's the duty of us to do better and ensure that that is happening, and not expecting other people, other communities to try to represent our communities to the best of its light. Because again, those communities see all Black people the same. So they don't see a problem with having a jollof and versus, what is it called? Jambalaya battle. Cause they think, they probably think all of that should taste the same. It doesn't. Also, there's very different jollof rice from Nigeria versus Ghana. You know, there's just, there's a little nuance in that. Even though my partner who's Nigerian will say Nigeria only has jollof rice. But, you know, that's
Listen, I was about to say, I heard Senegalese jollof is the best. But, you know, I'm not
a part of this conversation. You're not about to get me in trouble.
But no, I very much agree with you. I do think this is real, as far as like, in the same way that when I go to Carnival, I'm not like, hey, put on some J. Cole. Like, no, I'm here to participate in this culture. And if that's not what I'm interested in, I can take my ass back to Atlanta and North Carolina and get the experience that I want. And I do think it's important for us to see ourselves celebrated and reflected. So that's a very real point. And we can celebrate one another without getting insanely territorial, though. And I think that part of that is making sure that we honor valid critiques, which is why I mentioned earlier on, like, my valid critique for me is like, I want to see Harriet Tubman played by someone from this experience.
That's real.
I want to see my heroes played by people who were born into that context and like understand it viscerally because that is their world. I want to see other heroes played by other contexts too. Like I loved seeing Regina King, a Caribbean American woman, play Shirley Chisholm, a Caribbean American politician. Like I loved getting to see people portray these roles. I think that that's very different from expecting like, hey, Harry Potter should be like, there's a difference between bringing this into fiction versus saying, listen, like this is someone of deep significance to my community. And we want to see the opportunity go to someone within our community play it. So I think to your point, you make space for valid critiques so that the insanity doesn't overwhelm and then it turns into actual, as we've been calling them, diaspora wars. So it's all really real, but I'm excited because we're going to bring up a special guest to help us unpack this more deeply and just chart a better path forward to recognize that we have so much more in common than we have separate. And it's so important that we recognize those shared experiences.
So we'll be right back. You're watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. You know, before we went on break, Brea started talking about other races, and I knew we were going to be in some trouble because here we got our Somali sister, Lula, on the line, will be joining us. She is our sister friend, someone that I first started following online years ago. But, you know, her story, her amazing journey is something that we should all pay attention to and also continue to follow and uplift her because I think she is someone to watch now and watch for the future. Mm-hmm. But Lula D has been a trailblazer for more years than we can count. She ran for office in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was the first millennial woman to run for office in the city. And speaking of running, she also is the founder of iRunWithLula, a platform dedicated to helping women connect with each other, committing to their highest and most authentic self to transform the lives of those in their community and the lives of themselves. Lula is a brilliant Black woman from the South, North Carolina, but also from Somali with Somali roots, putting in the work across the diaspora and always willing to have the very uncomfortable conversations, which I think this is an uncomfortable conversation for many people, but she's able to bring like a lot of nuance to very tough conversations in a way that brings humor and inspiration. And as always, we're excited to have her on the show and hopefully we can, you know, get her back as much as possible. Yes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Don't be sliding in her DMs, y'all, either.
Nah, I mean, y'all might have to, shoot.
Listen, I'm ready. Okay, always ready. Send me a DM anytime. Okay,
ready.
Send me a DM.
Okay, so let's get into it though, because this conversation around diaspora, as we mentioned, like I feel like it resurfaces at least
every 30 days. It's like right when people want to get paid on social.
Right. Yeah, rent is due, diaspora wars time. So lately things have gotten very testy. In your opinion, where does this sentiment come from? These diaspora battles over Blackness?
You know, it's interesting. Well, first of all, hey, y'all. Second of all, I feel like when Jamira first told me about the conversation that you guys were having today, it took me back to 2020 when everybody was on Clubhouse. Everybody was talking about ADOS versus Africans almost every single day. It doesn't matter if it was 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. That was the topic of conversation. And at the time, I felt like it was super exhausting, but I felt like because the conversation wasn't elevated, right? Because it is a very nuanced and very necessary conversation. But what I realized is that it was on the hearts and minds of a lot of Black folks throughout the diaspora, right? The Black Brits, Africans, everybody was in on the conversation. But I think to answer your question, I think that at the heart of the conversation is about ownership. Who owns Black culture? Who owns the definition of Blackness? Who owns Black stories? And I think most importantly, who owns Black history? And I think we're all fighting for that ownership. But I think each group has developed almost like a unique understanding of what it means to be Black. And I feel like we don't have to fight to defend or protect our own certain versions. Like, all of it exists and it can exist at the same time. Right. I think sometimes where we falter is that I think we're prideful, but we don't have to be prideful without this air of superiority, right? All stories matter within this Black sphere that we exist in.
Yeah, and it's always really mind-boggling because I think people forget that like our bloodlines are connected, right? Like it's not like Black Americans were dropped from an alien ship and came to Earth. We are from the continent. We all are from the continent. We all have a legacy of, but I think it's a reminder. And I think we don't talk about this enough in Black history of the fact that, you know, Africa is a continent, but there were tribes. There were multiple tribes within countries, what we now identify as countries. And we tend to think that there was just this kumbaya moment, even within the continent before colonialism. And they had their own issues, right? And that seems to like bellow out as the diaspora. But we're all interconnected. And, you know, I think for you, someone who I think is so proudly Somalian, who like there's no ifs, ands, about it, but you're also a person that always elevates Black culture because you understand like the intersectionality of it. You know, how can we both celebrate ourselves while also recognizing there's no need to throw each other under the bus in order to win brownie points with white folks?
Yeah, I mean, to your previous point, you know, Somalia has its own very dark history with civil war. We were stateless for decades. And even now, there's a lot of turmoil, similar to what we had here with the Civil War. My parents are both from the northern region of Somalia, which now is called Somaliland. And there's still a lot of bickering, right? So even within Blackness, right? In a country where 100% of the people are Black, it's no longer about Blackness, it's about tribalism, like you said. So there's still a lot of bickering. So diaspora wars are not only happening throughout the international community, but also within countries like where my parents are from. But to your point, I think we need to shift the conversation from comparison to context, right? I think it's important for us to allow all stories to exist. But, you know, like I say all the time, I'm very fortunate to belong to two Somaliland parents. I always tell people it wasn't always sexy to be African. I have so many instances where from when I was younger in elementary school and middle school, where my mom would come in full African garb to PTA meetings. I remember her packing like Somali lunches, and like my peers would say like, oh, what is that? Because my food smelled differently from theirs. And even in my 20s, I felt the same type of energy when I decided to run for office, where immediately I was othered, even though I had served on several committees and boards and third vice chair and SEC member and DNC member. The moment I decided to run for office and try to ascertain some power for myself and my community, all of a sudden it was like, oh, she's Muslim. Oh, she's a daughter of immigrants. Oh, can we really trust her? Who is she? And that was the first time in my adult life, my Blackness was questioned again. So, and even recently, it's so interesting. A friend of mine who was completely innocent, he asked me, he said, how does your daughter feel about, how does your parents feel about having a daughter who's so Americanized? And I had to remind him, I'm not Americanized, I'm American. And it's so nuanced and so layered. And I don't think people really understand what they're saying, right? And I think that's why it's important for us to have a larger conversation about where we come from. And I understand the privilege I have in understanding my legacy and my lineage. Somalia, for instance, if I tell them what my name is, right, they can tell me where I live. And I understand how powerful that is. And I also understand who our real enemy is, and the fact that that history was taken away from African descendants of slaves, American descendants of slaves. So for me, it's like, let's have that conversation. It's very nuanced. It's very difficult, but I think it's necessary. That's why I appreciate the conversations we're having this morning.
Yeah.
Wait, they can tell where you're from by your name?
By your name. So in Somali, in the Somali language, if I ask my mom right now, Abtirso, meaning like, tell me your name, she can go all the way back to the origins. Sulugla Umar Jabril Dunkal Ahmed Alan Diria, and it goes on and on and on and on. So it's a privilege to know that, right? I know what my legacy is. I know what my lineage is. And but also at the same time too, I am a Black Southerner. You know, I've been here pretty much my entire life. So what does it mean to actually be Black? What does it mean to be Southern? You know, like I belong to so many different identities, and sometimes it's difficult when, you know, an average person will come up to you and say, where are you from? Immediately I say Somalia, so I can cut down on the BS, you know? But I'm like, you know, I feel like I'm from the west side of Charlotte, North Carolina. I tell that all the time. But my mom told me a very funny story the other day. Somebody came to her and was like, oh, where are you from? And she's like, oh, I'm from Charlotte. No, I'm sorry, I'm from New York. And she was like, oh, where in New York? And she was like, I'm from Harlem, USA. And he was like, no, but where are you really from? And she was like, oh, Uptown Harlem. That's where I'm really from. And it was the funniest thing to me. But I think, you know, it is nuanced and it's difficult, but I don't think people really take into their consciousness of what they're saying and take time to really ask the real questions that they want to know.
Yeah, that's so real. And I think a lot of those questions are meant to put you in a box and decide like, oh, this is what I think you are about and what you value, and who based on the answers to these questions. And there's just we are so much more than that. Sure. The idea that like, if the answer was Somalia, if the man's answer was west side of Charlotte, that you would have me figured out is like, no, there's still so much that makes you you and so much that shapes us. And I think that's where we have to avoid the like kind of labeling in a way that can limit people.
Yeah.
And part of me wonders too, I mean, you had mentioned the story about your mom, so maybe that's the answer to the question that I'm about to ask is no, but part of me wonders how generational this is. I mean, I think, you know, one of the movies that I love is Higher Learning, and they do, you have some of these scenes playing out in Higher Learning as well too. But like, I just feel like it's gotten to a place that is so, it can be so toxic. The like territorial, I own Blackness in this way and you don't, or I'm closer to the ancestors and you're not, and whatnot. And I'm just like, where did that stem from? And like, but you mentioned that you've been experiencing this even since like childhood. So I don't know, what's your take on this? Is social media making it worse? Is it always there and social media is just giving it a platform and a microphone? Like, where is this need coming from to dictate and police how others express their Blackness?
Yeah, because and just to expand on that, because I mentioned earlier, there's lies that we've all been told about each other, right? Yeah. Like there are images about Black folks that are shown in Africa that are only shown in Africa about how Black folks act in America, and vice versa, right? So to Brea's point, like, how generational is it, especially when Africans are coming to the America for the first time and their perspectives of Black folks? I can get it. If you've only been shown negative images about Black Americans, you don't want to be associated with them to some extent. So like, how do we unlearn, unpack, and re-examine our own bigotry within ourselves about the lies we've been told about each other?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's an incredible point, because I think at the root of that is fear, right? So a lot of immigrants coming to this country, Black immigrants specifically, and I could speak from my own personal experience with my parents, we've had those conversations about, oh, we're Somali, right? And I'm like, I always question that about, well, I'm Black as well, right? But they've never had to question their Blackness because they come from a Black country. So when they come here, it's more about culture. And they do see how Black Americans are treated here, and they're fearful of it, rather than saying, oh, we don't want to be a part of your community. But I always tell immigrants who come to this country, people that I come across, that it's your responsibility to learn the culture that you're coming to. And it is a difficult thing because you're just learning how to be. Right. And then all of a sudden you're put in this box where, like you guys were mentioning earlier, if you get stopped by the cops, they're not going to say, oh, she's from Somalia, let her go. They see Blackness first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And even now there's another layer of being an immigrant. So they're asking different questions on top of that. So I think it does stem from fear, to be honest with you. But I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of Black immigrants do have this conversation with their kids about, oh, we're not a part of them. We don't belong to that culture. We have our own culture, and wanting to separate from Black Americans, which is detrimental to themselves, right? Going against their own best interests. But I think there is a learning to do. And I think sometimes it is innocent. Sometimes it's more insidious. But I think it's important to try to have those conversations and build those bridges without burning your roots.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because we're at such a peculiar moment in American history where everywhere you look, if you are a person of color, you could be discriminated for something, right? You can be discriminated for being poor. You can be discriminated for being Black or brown. You can be discriminated for your religious beliefs. You can be discriminated for being an immigrant. And it's a little infuriating. It's exhausting, but there is hope, right? We just saw Zoran win the primary in New York. I just read about Minneapolis. I believe he's Somali American, right? That's freaking exciting, which begs the question, when you run it again, so I can put my money aside.
Period. Questions they need to answer.
Despite all of the tragedy that we are seeing, we're seeing almost a break away from the traditional norms of politics and the traditional norms of conversations where people are willing to have these conversations, are willing to vote for people who were traditionally seen as terrorists, right? And even looking at Zoran numbers, like he had more people who were financially of the upper class than they were of the lower class, like voting for him. So what gives you hope about this political moment, and where can we lean into the cultural differences as a way to uplift and celebrate each other in a more healthy way?
Yeah, I always have hope in the people. I always have hope in knowing that we're resilient. I see young people now banding together, both domestically and internationally. And it reminds me of a time where Palestinians were teaching Ferguson protesters how to fight back. Yes. It makes me emotional when I think about it, but I'm just sitting here thinking about that's what solidarity looks like. People who understand what oppression looks like and who the real enemy is and how to fight back stronger. People who never meet in life, but across social media, Twitter was a moment during the Black Lives Matter, era, and I'm excited about the youth using TikTok in a similar way to share information, to build resources and community in a way that I hadn't seen in a while. But it gives me a lot of hope, to do this work. I don't have to tell y'all, as exhausting. 2016, I was burnt out. I was like, I'm never coming back to organizing. I'm never coming back to politics. But now I feel a new sense of relief that young people are engaged. They're focused. This younger generation, they're kicking ass and taking names. They're not waiting for someone to hand them the baton. And oftentimes I hear people tell me here in Charlotte, oh, Lula, you were just before your time. If you were to run for office now, you would win. But I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in sharing the information that I do have now with the younger generation who's excited, who's exhilarated about running. It's not even about power for them. They really care about community in a way that I haven't seen in a while. And that gives me immense hope for the future and right now.
Yes. We need that more than ever. Whew. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, are there any, to the point of injecting hope, are there any examples of films or music or books or other resources that you feel like are demonstrating the beauty in us coming together and in our unity that you think are good? Because I think, to Jamira's point, so often what is amplified is the division, is the infighting. And sometimes we just need to be reminded that that is not the majority. There might be a loud group on social media that is doing that, but there are so many other examples of us building those bridges. So if there's any forms of media that you're leaning into that are demonstrating Black people coming together, I'd love to hear any of those from you.
Yeah. It took me a really long time to get here to this chapter of my life right now, but I'm only about focusing on us right now. I'm not about inclusion right now. I want to organize with Black folks who care about Blackness. I care deeply about progressive Black folks who want us to be liberated and free. And that doesn't mean that I align with all Black folks. But I was reading an essay I came across that I really loved a lot by Zora Neale Hurston called How It Feels to Be Colored Me. And I remember the first time I read it in high school, and then I revisited it in college. I went to a PWI, and I remember when my African-American lit professor brought it up to the class, and I'm surrounded by all these young white folks who could care less about it. But I remember being in the back kind of tearing up a little bit because it was the first time in my adult life where I felt like I was seen. It was this young Black woman who was kind of berated by other literary giants of her time, her peers, about the way that she wrote in her dialect. And they told her, you're setting us back, right? But her essay was almost to paraphrase, telling folks shame on you for not wanting to be around me and all that I have to offer this world, and all my Blackness, all my womanness, all my power that I have to share with this world. Shame on you. So it kind of put this idea of acceptance on its head, but it also talked about the power of Blackness and unity. It's just a reminder to me always that we need to be in community with one another. We have to have a deep understanding of who the real enemy is and stop all of this infighting if we can. But I think that only happens through conversation that can lead to community.
Wow. I've never read the article, her essay before, but I just pulled it up and I'm excited.
Yeah, that last paragraph, I was like, let me tap into that, and go about my day real quick.
Well, as always, it is a pleasure, and I'm excited to hopefully have you back on the show sooner rather than later, but you are brilliant. Can you please tell folks how they can stay in contact with you, follow you, learn more about the work, subscribe to your Substack?
Yes. So I have a newsletter on Patreon. You can follow me there. iRunWithLula, Lula. You can always follow my shenanigans on Instagram. My stories are always
worth
something. But no, I'm excited to be in conversation with y'all always. Love exactly what you're doing. And thank you absolutely for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. And happy belated birthday. Everyone go wish her.
Yes. Happy belated birthday. Yes. Follow that Patreon as a birthday gift.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye. Bye. So we're going to take a quick break. You are watching On the Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. As always, what a conversation. And it is important to note, there's so many battles to be fought. There's so many conversations to be had, but we can't do any of it without first building community with the people who share our lived experience, who look like us, and the work continues, but it first has to happen within. We have to unlearn all of the negative things we've been taught about each other in order for us to finally find opportunities for cross collaboration and to build co-conspirators in this fight, because our freedom is intertwined with each other more than ever.
Yeah. Completely agree. And we won't achieve a world free of anti-Blackness if we can't even see one another's inherent value. We can't get other people to see it if we are busy tearing it down. So unsubscribe from the diaspora wars. Lock in with those who are building intentional communities where we are all seen and heard. And remember that we are not a monolith. It is okay to love yourself and have pride in the amazing things that your ancestors have done without shitting on someone else's ancestors.
Couldn't agree more. You're watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. Until next time, keep pushing.